Peace and all good from Franciscan Media. I'm Father Jim Sabak, and this is the Inbreaking of the Word. 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time. We have just passed through, moving into the 18th week of the year, more than halfway through our Sundays in Ordinary Time now. Again, excluding the Sundays of Advent, or the Sundays of Christmas, and the Sundays of Advent and Christmas, and the Sundays of Lent and Easter. We are now more than halfway through the year. There are, 16 more Sundays left to our church years. Again, we're moving towards the end of summer vacations, and now moving again into fall. You don't want to think about that. It's only July, but it's actually August now. Yes, it is August. I can't remember where I am now, but it is August, and it's again, summer is beginning to wane as we get ready, to move more into the fall. But in doing so, again, we bring the understanding of resurrection with us. We bring the understanding of a Christ who is risen and is asking us to remember that and then to live out of that light. Again, so many times we get caught up with the idea of sacrifice. And again, the Mass is a great sacrifice. And we have crucifixes that are, at the back of our churches, because we have to remember that God demanded something of Jesus, because Jesus did it because God wanted it from us, and Jesus took the blame for us. And so sacrifice is understood too many times in that way, but that's kind of wrong, because that wasn't a part of the ancients' understanding of sacrifice. It was more the sense in which one gives of oneself totally, how one can not be afraid to give of oneself, and again, for others. That is what sacrifice is, and that is what we celebrate, and that only comes to its true fullness, again, with resurrection. If there is no resurrection, the sacrifice doesn't mean anything. But with resurrection, again, it shows this giving of Christ and this receiving by God, and God's giving in return, that life may be given to all. So again, within that understanding, that we move through the rest of Ordinary Time, trying to live as people who recognize what it means to give of ourselves freely, to give without thinking of the cost, to give without fear, to give with courage. And so these readings today, on this 18th Sunday of the year, that move into the 18th week of the year, kind of remind us of that. So the first one from Ecclesiastes, the church's book, as it's called. This is Koheleth, who basically speaks of vanity, and that everything is vanity. And even working for your own self is vanity, but then also inheriting what other people have worked for that you have not worked for is vanity. All of these things, again, it's like ending up, being sorry for yourself because you don't have things, or being, miserable because you don't have what everyone else has. Well, that also is vanity. Again, it's like there's so many ways in which vanity can take place, both among those who have everything and those who do not. An important thing to remember, because sometimes you take a look, again, at the poor as being open, hearted and mindful of that. But even within poverty, there can be a sense of jealousy and anger, and that in self is a vanity. It isn't always wonderful to be poor. It's really never wonderful to be poor, especially in this world today. But again, that kind of vanity can destroy us. It's linked with the gospel. So before we get into that, though, just to take a look again, but this also speaks of it, in the letter to the Colossians, which is, again, what our semi-continuous reading is, the second reading, in which basically Paul is saying, if you have received Christ, if you're a part of the family of Christ, if you're part of the life of Christ, then act like it. Again, this whole idea, it's like, if you say that you're a Christian, well, please act like it. It's like, don't just use it as a title for yourself, and then go off and act in all kinds of contrary ways that really make a mockery of who and what you are. If we do not act, as we are called to act as believers in this world, then the world will never come to belief, because we are, in many ways, the vehicle through which the world comes to belief or doesn't, by the way that we act and the way that we live. And then in Luke's gospel today, this parable, or this situation in which Jesus is called to be an arbiter between a family squabble, in a family squabble, in which somebody will not share an inheritance with, like a sibling will not share an inheritance with another sibling. And Jesus basically says, you're all worried about money. And then this parable comes up about this man who, has lived a good good life, and he decides to retire and build large barns to keep his produce and his proceeds, and he's going to live off that, and it's going to be wonderful, and he's going to enjoy his life. And then again, God comes to him and calls him an idiot because his life will be demanded of him, and he will die this night. Well, then to whom else will all of this wealth and all this power go? Again, the sense in which if we live only for this world, if we live only for, what the world sees as important and as valuable, then we will never live happy lives at all. The understanding of competition, of envy, of jealousy, of all kinds of things like that, again, make us unable to live lives fully human, and make us unable to live lives that are filled with the wonder and beauty of God's Spirit and God's love within us. To live as people conscious of the fact that we are called to something more is the more that we want, is the more that we yearn for, is the more that we need to direct our lives towards, a more that is based upon hope and love and forgiveness and generosity, a more that is based upon the fullness of what it means to be human and to live that without fear. That is what we need to store up in our lives and be able to share freely with others, not a selfishness that our world constantly pushes us towards, that will not offer us any hope or peace in the end. So peace and all good once again from Franciscan Media. May the Lord bless you with love and mercy.